I'm especially aware on this weekend of some of the folks who are not with us because of Men's Curcio. And so Chuck Pierce, one of our parishioners, isn't normally at this service, but he is the rector for the weekend, the head guy for the weekend. So they've been working for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks getting ready for this weekend. Father Kaz, who's normally here, is the spiritual director for that weekend. Shelley Taft normally plays the guitar up here. He's at that weekend. Peter Pignataro is normally here. John Churchy oftentimes comes and worships here as a parishioner. So there are numbers of folks who are gone this weekend helping to support the Curcio weekend, and so we just pray for them and lift them up, and I'd encourage you to pray for them and be attentive to the work that they're doing this weekend, and also the implication of that is with Father Kaz gone and Father Steve, who most of you know, down with hip surgery. That also means that there's only just one of me left. And there are 3 services that happen on this morning. So I did the 8 o'clock service over there, and I'll do this service now, and then I have to leave expeditiously to do the 10 o'clock service across the street. It is a triathlon. That's exactly right. And so I may not be able to, in fact, Kasha, the people's warden, is going to take over for me at the very end of the service after communion. And so if you have other things that you'd like to catch me for, you can feel free to send me an email or call me. I want to look at the gospel lesson that we just read for a little bit because it is such an important lesson for us. It is such an important lesson for us. So Jesus is a rabbi. He's a teacher. And so he's teaching, and there's a crowd of people in front of him. And one of the people who's in that crowd, a young guy, asks him a question. And the question is, would you intercede for me because my brother is not sharing the inheritance from my family with me? So now that raises a couple of questions. One is, what is an inheritance? So an inheritance is what happens when somebody who owns property dies, right? And you hand it on most often to your children if you have children. So that inheritance goes down to the children, and sometimes there can be conflict between the ones who would receive that inheritance. And so, anytime there are possessions, oftentimes there is conflict about it. And so this guy is saying to Jesus, this teacher, this rabbi, he's saying, would you go to my brother, probably my big brother? Probably none of you who have big brothers have ever had conflict with them. Never. And he says, would you please go to my big brother and tell him to share the inheritance with me? He's keeping it all to himself. And he's asking then Jesus to intercede as the teacher, and oftentimes rabbis would do that. They'd help to settle disputes. But Jesus, in this case, would have none of it. He won't even get into the middle of that situation. In fact, he's a little gruff. He says, man, it's a little stark in his reply. He says, man, who appointed me as a judge or an arbiter between you? And then he says to them. So now he speaks to the crowd, to the people, the rest of the people. So here's this guy, and now he's speaking to the crowd who's been overhearing this conversation about this guy and his situation. And he's saying to them, watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. And so here's this guy, but this guy is in the middle of a struggle. And Jesus is saying it's not just about possessions. It's not just about the inheritance. It's about his soul. It's about what's going on inside of him. And this guy is at the very edge of a struggle for the value of his life. He can spend the rest of his life fighting this battle over possessions, or he can be freed. And the question is, what is he going to choose? And so Jesus decides to tell a story, a parable. And this is the story he tells. He says, the ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. And then he says, this is what I'll do. This is what I'll do. He says, I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, This very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God. This is how it will be for those who store up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God. And that's the key to understanding this whole story, this whole parable. So it would be easy for us to kind of look at this man and his situation and for our eyes to go to the big barns and to the even bigger barns that he wants to build, and to say the problem is his possessions. The problem is the wealth that this guy has. But Jesus is saying, that's not the problem. I mean, that's the circumstances. Those are the circumstances. But the problem is his soul. The problem is what is going on in his life. When you were growing up, did your parents ever talk to you about waste? Did your parents talk to you about waste? Yeah. What kinds of things are you not supposed to waste? Food. Oh, there's a lot. I can hear a lot of energy behind that. It's like, what other things are you not supposed to waste? Electricity. What else? Water. Money. Time. Anything else? There's a lot of stuff, isn't there? There's a lot of stuff that even from the time when we were kids, we're told you're not supposed to waste this stuff. So sit there and eat what's on your plate, right? Because there are other people who don't have as much, so sit there and eat what's on your plate. When you leave a room, be sure to turn off the lights, because otherwise it's just waste. When you're in the bathroom, make sure you turn off the faucet so that the water doesn't go to waste. All kinds of things. We are concerned about waste. Actually, frankly, probably not anywhere near as much as we should be concerned about waste and the natural resources that are around us. That's another sermon. But what about a wasted human life? What about a wasted human life? Someone who leads their entire life and doesn't accomplish anything of value. That's tragic, isn't it? I mean, that's tragic. We see it in the press. We see it in Hollywood. We see it in the community around us. We see it all the time. People who lead their entire lives and don't accomplish anything of value. And so we come to this guy who's in the story, this rich man who's looking at all of these barns. And Jesus is saying, this is the profile of a life that is wasted, that's accomplished nothing. And there are several points that we could just kind of highlight. First off, as he's talking, he's consumed simply with himself, right? And so there's no acknowledgement that there are family members or friends or even co-workers that are somehow helping him to make the decisions or that are of value in what he's talking about. He doesn't talk about those people who are actually going to labor to tear down those barns and build up other ones. He doesn't talk about the other people who are harvesting, bringing in this harvest for him. He doesn't talk about his wife or his children who might inherit some of this or be involved with the family business. He doesn't talk about any of them. He also, he doesn't talk about the people who are around him who have needs. So he doesn't talk about the poor. He doesn't talk about the sick. He doesn't talk about the broken, the people who are struggling all around him. He's oblivious to the needs of the people who are around him. And then right at the very beginning, most obviously, he doesn't talk about God. He just assumes he's got this huge, abundant harvest. And it just kind of happened because he somehow deserves it. Not recognizing that all that we have that's good comes from the hands of a generous God who provides for us, who cares for us, who gives us all of the resources that we need. And with it, just this blessing and this opportunity to be a blessing to the people around. This guy, as you listen to the way Jesus tells the story, the parable, he uses over and again, first-person pronouns. Remember your English. I, my, myself. It's all about me. And so he surrounds himself with himself, for himself, focused on himself. And just constantly there's this withering of his soul as he can't see the needs or the desires or even the relationships of anybody else around him. And so he folds in around and becomes more and more focused internally. He just begins to shrink as a human being. He becomes small. He becomes insignificant to the people who are around him. You know, there's the expression that you can't take it with you. It's not true. Because we take our souls with us, don't we? Our souls become the accumulation of all of the choices, the values, the things that we felt are important in this world. And so as we continue to give in to this sense of focusing on ourselves and being there only for ourselves and serving only ourselves, we become smaller and smaller and smaller and into all eternity. That really is the definition of hell, isn't it? Shrinking forever. But Jesus says to this guy who's wanting to fight over this inheritance, there's another way. There's another way. You can open yourself up. You can open yourself up and you can, whatever resources you've got, whatever is going on in your life, you can open yourself up and give yourself in relationship to the people who are around us, who are around you. You can give yourself to your brother. Whether he gives you a penny, you can give yourself to him. And you can serve him and you can love him. You can care for the people who are in your family. You can care for the people who are poor and who are suffering around you. No matter what your resources or what your assets, you can give yourself. And in so doing, pile up, save up this richness towards God and allow God's love to flow through you and to change you to become more and more and more like him. And so we, each of us have that opportunity. Each of us face every day the need to make that choice about, are we living our lives just simply for our own selves, or are we living our lives for the benefit of the people who are around us and for the God who has given us life? And then for us individually and corporately, for us to invest together through the Church of St. Mary's, to be able to invest together in the lives of the people who are around us and allow this love, this grace, this mercy to continue to bubble up through us and bring us vitality and life and energy and things that are really interesting. This past week, here at St. Mary's, in this very room, part of it, was Vacation Bible School. So that was an experience that we had in terms of investing in other people. And so part of it had to do with our kids. Do you know there were 136 kids that attended Vacation Bible School? I think there was permanent hearing damage done in this room by the loud sounds that were going on. But it was just this opportunity to be able to invest in the lives of those kids and their families, and to be able to see what it was that God can do as these kids and families came in touch with this good news about who it is that God is and how it is that God loves them and wants to use them. I have just a memento. Because momentum would be fast. So if you take a memento with momentum, that would be a fast moment. So we won't go there. But I want to show you this, which was a kind of the culminating artwork from this past week. Well, I'm good. Can you see it if I put it down this way? Can you see me if I put it this way? Can you see it? There you go. Now, I'm wondering if there's somebody who is at Vacation Bible School who worked on this who can come and tell us what it is. Can somebody come? Do you want to come? Okay, why don't the two of you come? Okay, Nikki, what can you tell us about this?
It's the hands around God, and especially about learning about the other places where our neighbors are.
Okay. And where were those other neighbors?
In different states and countries.
Different countries around the world. Yep. And tell me your name.
Cody.
Cody. And Cody, tell me about this. What do you think about this?
It's hands around the world to represent everybody around who's going to church every Sunday and worshiping God and Jesus.
Wow, very cool. Very cool. And so, do you have a hand up there? Mm-hmm. Do you know where yours is? Nikki, do you know where yours is? No.
There's Nikki's.
Oh, she found Nikki's. Well, very cool. So it was the theme for this past year, and so it was the opportunity for them to talk about how it is that God moves in us around the world, right? And so uses each one of us. So their hands are important. 136, right? 136 kids who were there to be able to put their hands on there. And so if you see it up close, you can see their names are written on each hand. Right? Is that right? Good job. Give them a hand. Thank you. In order for this to happen, there are also about 60 volunteers from here at St. Mary's to allow that to happen, which means even just for this project, there had to be somebody, an adult, to help them get the paint, put it on their hands, do this project, and also wash off their hands. Their parents were particularly happy that there were people who washed the paint off their hands before we sent them home to be with them. To teach also classes in which kids heard Bible stories, to be able to classes in science, classes in all kinds of music and other ways of being able to hear just this good news about this God who created us and who wants to use them to change the world. Your prayers, your support for Vacation Bible School makes a difference. It made a difference in the lives of those kids. I remember for me as a kid, I was growing up and I attended Vacation Bible School, and I can still see the face of the woman who was my teacher at Vacation Bible School. I'll see her forever. And it was good. It was very good. We have a choice. We have a choice every single day how it is that we're going to spend our lives, our time, our energy, our financial resources, our intellectual capacity, all of the stuff that God gives to us. We have a choice about how it is we're going to spend it, how it is that we're going to use it. The world is filled with God's beauty, and to be able to give ourselves to Him, to allow Him to use us, to shape us, to mold us, creates beauty and wonder and excitement in everything it touches. And that's where He calls us. And that's what it is that we have the opportunity to be a part of. Thanks be to God. Thanks be to God. All right, so let's stand together.